Zombies time. Zombies 4 is released. Okay, first of all, we gotta recap the first 3 movies briefly for formatting purposes. Movie 1, we have humans and zombies, and the zombies are a metaphor for racism and the schools that get desegregated. And it's kind of bad because zombies don't make a great metaphor for people getting discriminated against because they're zombies. Then they made a second movie and they added werewolves. And the werewolves are like kind of Native American-y, where they're like the original inhabitants of the land. So there's a metaphor to be had there, but it's not so overt to the point where you're like questioning why they're werewolves. So it actually works a lot better as a metaphor. And then they made a third movie and they were like, so it's aliens, and then that was the movie. And the moral was that if you're aliens, Earth is cool. Live here. So they stopped trying. So we moved from movie about discrimination overtly, movie about discrimination but more broadly, and then movie that just stopped trying to be about discrimination. So my fears for the fourth movie was they were just done with this whole discrimination angle, and the moral was just gonna be like, don't lie to your friends or some bullshit. Thankfully they didn't do that. They seem to be taking a step back in the discrimination direction. They haven't really re-reached their heights of 2, but it's certainly an improvement on 3. As far as how good the movie is, I have to say this movie has brain-rotted me to the point where I can no longer tell, because I just enjoy these characters so much at this point that I'm just like, yay, my friends are back. So I think it's a good movie, but also like I'm hearing terrible jokes being told and like people not acting at all like humans would ever act, and I'm just like, yay, movie time. So this movie it's just beyond me at this point. You just have to accept that if you're not a Zombies fan at this point, like, why the fuck are you watching? And as far as zombie fans go, they know their target audience. They delivered. They said, we're gonna take 4 characters from the original series. The 2 leads, the rebel zombie girl, and the cool werewolf that I liked. And then they're like, no aliens will be appearing in this movie. The aliens have been completely cut. So that they're seemingly in agreement with me that the aliens was shit. So that's good. That's a good turn. Funny that the 4th installment in the movie series Zombies has just the main zombie boy and the rebel girl zombie. So it's like, well, technically it's zombies because we've got 2 of them. They deliberately put the rebel zombie there just so they could be like, technically it's zombies. There is 2. Now our new monsters for this film is vampires, which is funny because Zombies actually did like a shit ton of promotional material across these 3 movies, and like there's a ton of like weird shorts and stuff like on YouTube. And I'm not just talking about the reanimated series, which is like a really big series that they're doing. I've seen some of that, and it seems like cute and fun, but it's not like interesting enough to really talk about. But there's like when the second movie came out, they did like a bunch of like werewolf shorts and stuff. And like if you dig hard enough, there's like some weird like terribly animated vampire short where like a vampire shows up on some zombies YouTube channel that probably has like 100 views. And people in the comments were like, they can't make vampire the new character for this movie. They're already established as a thing in this universe. And it's like, as if Disney Channel would be like, well, we gotta keep the lore consistent with this fucking YouTube video that we made 7 years ago. So yeah, that video is clearly decanonized now. Vampires are in the movie, but plot twist, they also added daywalkers, which are like the anti-vampires. So in the first movies, there was the Moonstone, and that's what made all the monsters so far. But then at the beginning of this movie, they're like, 2 more Moonstones fell like a little ways away also. And they made the vampires and the daywalkers. Then it also made this fruit called blood fruit. But the design is just a dragon fruit, so I think it's just dragon fruit, and the people that live there just don't realize that was already a thing, so they just named it the wrong thing. And then, yeah, they compete over the blood fruit, and you're like, guys, there's plenty of dragon fruit, like, just, it's fine. This is a real fruit. Also, way later in the movie, when the daywalkers and the vampires grow to learn about each other, they're like, and it's like, but the Daywalkers also eat blood fruit, and they don't have fangs. So why do you have fangs? Maybe? They don't actually eat it right. The Daywalkers take bites. The vampires just suck it out. So they competed over the blood fruit, and over time the two groups grew apart from each other, grew to distrust each other, and now they live in separate communities in fear of one another. But their blood fruit orchards are dying, so now they have to go to the middle mutual demilitarized zone-esque orchard together, and there's going to be conflict. Gee, I wonder if these two sides are going to learn to set their differences aside and realize that they're more alike than they really think, and, you know, learn that they're stronger as one community in this movie, because that's a plot I've never seen in any kids' media ever before. So that's the plot of the movie. That's what happens. So, I mean, there you go. That's kind of about discrimination, because, like, there's two groups that discriminate against each other, and they learn not to do that. But also, you're kind of like, wait a second, I'm only really treating daywalkers and vampires as a racism metaphor because the zombies and the werewolves are racism metaphors. But really, in this movie, in isolation, like, it could just as easily be, like, the greasers and the whatever, the socks or whatever it is in Greece, or like the motorcyclists and the surfers in Teen Beach Movie, or like the East Siders and the West Siders. Like, they could be any two groups. So yeah, it's really not a racism metaphor when you think about it. It's just a two groups metaphor. So it's kind of in the direction of being about racism, but it's not actually. Okay, now we have to actually talk about the vampires and the daywalkers, because what the fuck. I do have to give them some amount of allowances here for their design choices, because a lot of their design choices are very in line with the zombies universe, like, as it's been established. Because the zombies already don't really look that much like zombies, they just have green hair. And the werewolves, like, don't turn into wolves, they just have fangs and teeth. And the aliens just have, like, blue hair and technology. So, like, you're like, okay, when they introduce a new monster, it's just kind of like a human, but, like, they have a few kind of monster-y features. The Daywalkers have day powers, so they're like our solar-powered flare and stuff like that, and they shoot fire. So it's mostly just them shooting fire. They're the opposite of the vampires, which are the night creatures. But the thing is, the vampires, they live in like a town that's magically always nighttime, so they are nocturnal, but not really, because it's always night. So once they leave that town, they just sleep at nighttime again, and they're up during the day. So they're just not night creatures. And when they go in the sun, they're like, I was taught that the sun would burn us to death, but actually it doesn't. So like, okay, you're just not a night creature. You're just a guy. And the fact that the people that are the opposite of you are sun-themed is just, they're not actually opposites to any degree. Which I guess makes sense, because the theme is like, we're not so different, you and I. But you would think one's sun and one's night, and they seem opposite, but they're really not. But no, it's just kind of like, we're sun, and they're vampires. And you're like, they're just unrelated. Daywalkers don't have fire powers because vampires are weak to fire. They have fire powers because burning anyone alive is a strong power. And the vampires are afraid of them not because they're weak to fire, but because they don't want to be burned alive. And it's like, yeah, I would die there. The fact that they're vampires has nothing to do with it. They just don't want to be burned. And then the vampires' powers, they skipped over, you know, blood or immortality or any of the classic vampire abilities and skipped right to flying, which is like, okay, that is a vampire power, but that's like 7th or 8th down the list after like a lot of other vampire powers. It's weird for that to be their one power. And they're like, we fly because we control the wind. And then they make like little storm clouds with like little thunder and clouds, and you're like, that's not a vampire, that's just a storm. That, like, if you told me our new creature's powers are making wind and storm, I'd be like, so it's like a genie or something? It's the Daywalkers and the genies. That's what this movie's really about. They just accidentally called the genies vampires. When the vampires do use their abilities, like every monster in this universe, like, they have a glowy thing. Either they'll take off their Z-band to go zombie, and the werewolves, like, they activate their moonstone to go wolf out, and the aliens use their alien tech to, like, alien out. So the vampires, when they, like, vamp out, they do get fangs, but, like, by default, when they aren't doing that, they just don't have fangs. So, like, most of the time when you're looking at them, they're like, you're just Hot Topic genies. And, like, the werewolves, when they aren't wolfed out, they have fangs. So the werewolves are more vampire-esque than the vampires are. So that, yeah, a lot of questions to be had there. Okay, so we're introduced to the two sides, the daywalkers and the vampires, and they're both scared of one another, but they have to go to the mutual orchard to get the fruit. And there's, like, the mommy vampire and daddy daywalker. And the daddy daywalker is talking to his daughter, which is, like, the progeny of the daywalkers. And the daughter's like, "Father, how long must we live in fear of people we don't even know?" And he's like, and, like, it feels like it was written in such a way that was supposed to be, like, she was, like, bringing up, like, dissenting view to their way of life, and he was, like, dismissing it. But, like, the way he delivers it is as if she asked a genuine question. Like, she's like, "How long are we going to be discriminating against people we don't actually know?" And he's like, "Oh, you know, for as long as I'm the leader." Like, it didn't occur to him that might be her questioning him. Like, he thought she asked it in earnest. Like, she was like, "Just for scheduling reasons, Father. I was just a bit curious as to how long we'll be discriminating against people we don't know." "Oh, forever? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't get that. Okay." That's a beautiful line delivery. Then, yeah, our titular leads, the two zombies, our main character who was a human, but at this point in the series is half alien, half human, and then the werewolf lead. So, no more humans. There's not a human in this movie. I think the opening scene, there's some humans in the background. That's it. Humans have fully moved out of importance in this universe. And they're going on a road trip because they had such a busy year of college because they went off to college at the end of the last movie. So they're going on a road trip so they can see their friends again. There's a big power surge and it makes the Z-bands stop working. What a fucking surprise. The Z-bands aren't fucking working. And Zed the zombie's out and he crashes the car and they're like, "We gotta go look for help." And then the zombies find the daywalkers and Addison finds the vampires and they're both like, "Oh, we're going to the orchard to get fruit. Here's exposition." And then they go and find the other side and they're like, "Urgh, it's the other side." They're like, "We can't get into the orchard because it's locked by 3 keys." And so Mommy Vampire and Daddy Daywalker are like, "Alright, daughter and son, we're fucking off. Unclear as to why. We're outie. You guys, you and your friends," it's not really explained why all the vampires and daywalkers we see are like teenagers. They just kind of are. If you're not the daddy or the mommy, you're a teen. So he's like, "Yeah, take your teen friends, find these keys. We'll be back when you do that shit." So they fuck off, and then the vamps and the daywalkers are like competing to find the keys. And they're like, "We gotta set up camp somewhere because we're in the middle of this random forest." And they're like, "Look, we found a campgrounds. And it's got daywalker and vampire symbols on it." And the daughter of the daywalkers and the son of the vampires are like, "Wow, both symbols. That's crazy to us." And then everyone's like, "Wow, seems like the vamps must have tagged the daywalkers' place or something, 'cause there's no way we ever worked together in the past." And you're like, "Gee, wonder if it'll turn out that they worked together in the past." Then they're like, "I guess this means we're camp counselors, guys." And so the zombies and the werewolves are their camp counselors. Which is like, up until this point, I was like, this is such a weird zombies movie. Because all of the zombies movies up until this point have been about high schoolers, like, dealing with discrimination and monsters. So, like, it just being about 2 groups, you're just kind of like, this is not, like, themed correctly for this franchise. So now they're like, discrimination camp. It's camp vampire, camp daywalker. So now you're like, okay, yeah, now it makes sense. Now it's on theme. It's a camp movie. But also you're like, no, these are just like 2 groups of people going to war with each other. But they're at camp while doing it. So that's just golden. That's lovely. So then we do like a song number. I guess I should get into the songs. They're certainly better than the Descendants 4 songs, because those songs were atrociously bad. Are they as good as Zombies 2? No, because the Zombies 2 soundtrack is baller as hell. But it's better than... It's close to Love Live 3. Maybe it's better than 1. It's meh. I'd give it an overall meh. There is one song that's the ending song is like a reprise of a song from Zombies 3, and that song's probably the best song on the soundtrack. But it's literally stolen from 3, so you're like, that's why it's the best one. It's from a previous movie. Anyways, soundtrack's fine. They have a song, they compete, they find the key by accidentally working together, and then you're like, wow, they're gonna learn to work together while at camp, aren't they? So now they have to get 2 more keys. Then we get to the love story. The vampire's like, that daywalker lady who's in charge, I saw her in my dreams. And she's like, I saw him in my dreams. And then like every time they look at each other, like there's like a pause. And they're like, whoa, I have a crush. But like they never spoken to each other. So you're kind of like, that's not a crush. You're just insane. Like there's nothing they have in common. But when they look at one another, the screen lingers and like goes slow-mo for a second. So they're in love. In every one of these movies, there's always a scene where Zed accidentally startles Addison, and then she accidentally hits him, and then she goes, oops, reflexes. But instead, in this movie, the vamp boy accidentally startles the daywalker girl, and she hits him, and she's like, oops, reflexes. It's like a joke. It's like they stole their thing. And then when they walk off together during nighttime, Zed and Addison is like, they remind us of someone we know. Like us is like the joke. And you're like, but no, because you guys had things in common, and like you were both nice and funny people, and you liked each other. These people just look at each other and go, I have a crush. So yeah, that's infuriating. The two of them, once they get their scene together, then they start talking about like, I'm being told how to be a leader, and I feel like I do a bad job because I don't know if I believe in all this nonsense about how the other side is so bad. And they're like, I feel that way too, and I don't think you're a bad leader for feeling that way. And then like they get along, and you're like, okay, finally we get like a thing they have to bond over. So after their love song, they're like a fine couple, and it's like, okay. But for the first like quarter of the movie, you're just like, please, can you speak to each other first? So that was a little annoying. Then, like, the werewolves bully the vampires into behaving, which is funny because she's, like, a werewolf, and there are, like, 18 vampires, but they're all afraid of her. And you're like, that's fucking right, bitch. Okay, moving on. The second trial is when they have their love song. They find the key by working together. So you're like, yes, I'm catching on to how this movie works. They learn to work together. So then they do their third trial, is a big rock, and you can either push it to the sun side of the little area the rock's in, or the moon side. And they're like, oh, I get it. If you push it to the sun side, the sun people go to the orchard, and if you push it to the moon side, the vamps do. So both sides are like, we gotta compete to win. And then our lead vampire boy and sun girl are like, no guys, we gotta cooperate. All these trials have been about cooperating. And they're like, no, this one clearly has no cooperative answer, so we gotta compete. And then I guess the magic pulse of Moonstone magic that messed with Zed's Z-Band at the beginning of the movie that caused them to crash and set this plot in motion, like, it goes off again, and Zed's like, owie, I'm all hurty now. And everyone's like, oh, never mind. Let's stop competing to help Zed, our mutual friend. And you're like, first of all, damn, didn't know you liked Zed that much. Kind of feels like you just met him. And, like, you're competing for the food that your people need to, like, not starve. So it's a little surprising that not a single person was like, I'm just gonna be the one person who hangs behind and just keep pushing this rock and immediately win. But no, everyone's like, forget this fucking rock. Zed's in trouble, guys. Once Zed is all sick or whatever from the pulse fucking with his Z-Band or whatever, then he's all like, and it's like, hold up. I saw the first movie, Zombies. Your fucking best friend was named Bonzo, and he only spoke zombie. You're just not gonna mention him? And, like, earlier in the movie, earlier in the movie, they, like, quickly go through all their friends, and they're like, but then when it comes to him being like, I can't believe I didn't spend more time with my friends, he just doesn't get a call out at all. It's like, damn. Fucking rip Bonzo. Also, Addison had, like, a human friend. She was, like, plot relevant in the first one. She's just been written out of the movies at this point. Bree, yeah. Fuck that girl, I guess. Anywho, the moral of this story is if two sides can't get along, find a mutual friend between those two sides, and every time they start having a conflict, just beat the shit out of that one friend. The one friend doesn't have to do anything wrong. He just has to have the shit beaten out of him. And then the two sides will stop fighting, because they'll be so concerned about their friend that's getting beaten up. And then once that
friend is doing okay, and then they go back to fighting,
just go back to beating him up again, and then they'll stop. They'll stop real fast. And it works. And you can just imagine, like,
magic of the Moonstone being like,
well, you guys are fighting again. Whack, whack. Sorry, Zed. This has to happen. You have to get beaten. It's the only way to resolve this conflict. And then Zed's just like, please resolve this conflict. No more beatings. Anyways, they're like, this pulse is from the Moonstone, so it's activating all of our powers, werewolf, alien, and zombie. But Zed feels it the worst because his Z-band barely fucking works as is because he breaks it in every episode. So wonderful that they brought up the fact that he fucks with his Z-band in every single movie of the series. Very funny that they called themselves out on that. And the fact that they're like, yeah, that thing's fucking barely holding together. It's on its last leg. The latch broke in the second movie. We hacked into it in the first movie. The werewolf's moonstones deactivated it in the second movie. Addison's alien tech fucked with it in the third movie. This shit barely works. It's held together with duct tape and rubber bands. Yeah, they have to work together to stop the moon blasts from killing Zed with moon blast energy. And he's like, if we don't do something fast, he's gonna be full zombie forever. And he's like, isn't the whole moral of this series that, like, that's not a bad thing? Anywho, they go down to some weird cave and they find that some of the roots from the orchard has, like, a big, what do you call those things that plants grow on? An arbor? It's like an arbor, I think, is what I'm thinking of. Oh, a trellis. Yeah, it's like a big trellis, kind of. And they're like, the trellis broke and it's smashing the branch, the roots now.
So we gotta move it. And then they move it, and it's like, we fixed it.
They have to work together to move it, though. So they learn to work together. And then they do a big speech where they're like, vampires? Daywalkers? At the end of the day, what's the real difference?
Did you ever consider that fans of space adventure...
Speckies?
Right, Speckies. Have more in common with fans of Stumbleberry Finkbat and...
Finkies?
Maybe Speckies and Finkies have more in common than they do differences.
And so they were like, remember that big stone we had to push to one side or the other? If we used our eyeballs, we would have seen that there was a third side that had the sun and the moon mixed together. That's the side we have to push it to. I forgot to look at that side, so let's push it to that side. Then they push it to that side, and they're like, oh, conflict resolved. Now we can go into the orchard and get all the blood fruit we need. And then Mommy Vampire and Daddy Daywalker show up and like, we're back! Wow!
Now let's go inside and not let the other half have any. And then the other side's like, no, let's go inside and not let your other half have any.
And you're like, it's one thing to get children to realize the bigoted shit their parents tell them isn't true. But when those bigoted parents start making decisions, suddenly it's a whole fucking other story. And you're like, that's accurate, yeah, good job, that's how it works. And like, to be honest, when you think about it, none of the adults in any of the previous movies ever changed their mind as to the discrimination thing. Addison parents were like, very evil through the entire series. So you're like, yeah, that sounds about right. Then the vampires fight, and they make a big flame blast that burns down half the orchard. And the orchard's like, I told you kids that I would beat the hell out of Zed if you kept fighting. Whack, whack, whack. Stop fighting, whack. And Zed's like, damn, stop fighting, guys.
This magic force sure is beating the crap out of me here.
And Magic's sorry, gotta do it. It's the only way to resolve conflicts. So now Zed's pretty badly hurt. And then...
And they go back to where that arbor or trellis, whatever the hell it is, thing is.
And they're like, huh, there seems to be like a slotty thing on this that would fit a moonstone or two. And they're like, oh.
If we bring both of the two halves of the two moonstones from our two cities here together...
They'll fit together here. And they're like...
They weren't two moonstones. They were two halves of one moonstone. But now both sides hate each other, And our moonstones are like the most valuable thing we own. So how?
Our leads have to be like, have a pep talk, guys. At least try and do it. And they're like, I guess we must try. And then they walk up to where their respective moonstones are, and there's like 2 guys guarding it, and they're like, kick. And the 2 guys go out, and they're like, grab moonstone, run off. And they're like, damn, it was real fucking easy. They're like, yeah, it turns out
Their culture's most valuable artifact.
it was just 2 kicks away. So they get the 2 moonstones, and they bring them back, and they put them together.
And then it cures the orchard and regrows all the fruit. And then both sides' respective mommy and daddy show up, and they're like, ugh, I'm repulsed by this shit.
And then they're like, us kids picked all of the fruit before you guys could come fuck shit up, and we're sharing it. And look.
When we brought the moonstones together, it cured the orchard.
And then mommy and daddy are like, this has completely discredited my entire worldview. I see now I was 100% wrong. You guys are the best. And they're like, yay! Happy ending! Everybody dance now. And then everybody dances now.
And then I'm here thinking like, oh cool, they brought the 2 moonstones to where they belonged, together. Just like how the 2 communities belong together. But then the main girl is like, to celebrate this, let's agree to bring our moonstones back here once a year to celebrate. And it's like, what? You're not just gonna leave them here? This was clearly designed to be like the place where they belong, where they fit together. You're like, okay, now let's separate them back up and bring them back to our separate communities, but once a year they'll go back together. So weird.
Yeah, and then they touch the roots of the plant that grows some moonstone, and they're like, oh, we're cured now of all this fuckery that we got from the beams of energy. But the thing is, like, it makes sense that the werewolves and aliens were cured because the moonstone is what powers them. But the moonstone is what makes zombies into zombies. The Z-bands is what makes them human. So if the power of the moonstone was destroying your Z-band and making you go full zombie, curing the moon tree and fueling yourself with its energy would not fix you. It would make you worse. But it cures him, so don't question it. It cures him. At the end, they bring back a song from the 3rd movie, like I said. But the really funny thing is, the song from the 3rd movie, like, let me actually pull up the lyrics. So this is the opening song to Zombies 3. But it's the closing song to Zombies 4. And in Zombies 3, it's like a call and response song, where Zed is like, we're not breaking up, we're not falling out, and we won't change. And then Addison goes like, I hope. And then Addison's like, when it comes to trust, there's nothing that we can't say. We're not worried. Definitely not worried. At all. We're not worried. Definitely not worried. It's so disturbing how all these stars align, but we're not nervous and totally unconcerned with all things uncertain. And then they call response, but this isn't going to be good. So, like, the joke of the song is that, like, they're telling themselves everything's going to be okay, but, like, they know it's not, you know? And they're like, there's nothing to be concerned with here. And they're like, absolutely nothing to be concerned with here. And they're like, yep, totally nothing. And you're like, okay, so there's something to be concerned with here. But at the end of the 4th movie, it's just played for straight. They're just like, yeah, we're so fine. Nothing bad is going to happen now. And they're like, indeed nothing bad is going to happen now, because it's the end of the movie. And you're like, I know the song. I've heard it in the Zombies 3 soundtrack. That's not how it's supposed to be interpreted. And, like, they go from the song lyrics, like, to an instrumental, right? At the part where they go, like, this isn't gonna be good, because, like, they have to cut out the part where they imply that it's not supposed to be taken seriously. And they just leave in the part where they're like, we're gonna be fine, so fine. It's so funny. I love it. It's so funny. Honestly, the thing about this series is, as much as I like to make fun of it, you can just tell the people who made it have so much fun making these movies that's like you can't help but have a good time while watching them. And also, they've completely messed up the costuming at this point. Originally, it was humans are pink, zombies have green hair, and they wear red and gray. Then we got werewolves, which had white streaks in their hair, and they wear purple and pelts. And then we got aliens, which have blue hair and blue clothes. And so you could always tell who everybody was based on their color coding. But in this movie, they added the Daywalkers are red and white, and they wear like varsity kind of as clothing, which is a new color palette. But the vampires are red and black, and the zombies were already red and gray. So you're like, that's too close at this point. Also, the lead
Daywalker
girl wears a jacket with one sleeve, and it's like, are you hot or cold? Are you such hot that you need it only one sleeve, but not so hot that you want to take off your jacket? Anyways, so Addison has moved throughout the series from having fake blonde hair to cover up her white hair in the first movie, true white hair in the second movie, to learning she's an alien, getting blue hair in the third movie. Now in this movie, she's back to white hair, but she's added a purple streak to her hair to show that she's part alien, even though the aliens were blue and purple is the werewolf's color. So that makes no sense. Addison just fucking ditched the color scheme on that one. So they mess up there. The vampires have black hair with red highlights, and the Daywalkers have blonde hair with gold leaf in their hair. That's another design decision where you're like, that's odd. Also, the sets are not nearly as good, because the Daywalker town and the Nightwalker town are like CGI backdrop. That's kind of it. I guess the camp is a real set. The camp is fine. This new couple, it ends with them being like, I've established that I like you, and I like you too. And then they walk off their own ways, and then they double back, and they embrace, and you're like, they're gonna kiss, because it's a kid's movie. They don't, they hug. And you're like, aw, that was cute. But like, that's such a zombies thing. Like, I don't think our leads kissed in the first movie, and I'm not even sure if they kissed in the second movie. They loved slow burn this shit. And then after that, the very end of the movie, they look out to the, after hugging, they look out to the ocean. A big whirlpool happened. A Sharknado is out there. So you're like, what is this introducing? And the funniest thing is the end of the second movie, Addison goes, I wonder why my hair is white then if I'm not really a werewolf. And then her hair glows and like a shooting star shoots by. And then the third one's about aliens. You're like, okay, they teased aliens. At the end of the third one, they're like,
we're all friends now, and we're ready for any new monsters that may show up.
And then a wave crashes, and you see a mermaid. And you're like, oh, mermaids are next, guys. And then vampires are next. But this one ends with the big whirlpool. So you're like, so is that mermaids again? Like, I think just going forward, they should just always tease mermaid at the end. And just never deliver. Like, because they said they might do another trilogy. So the next one, they should just do, like, ghosts or something. But then at the end, they're like,
the ghost sure did end up becoming our friends.
Mermaid, like, swims by. And then on the last one, they're like, witches show up or something. And they're like, we've all become friends. And us witches are ready to meet any kind of new monsters that might show up. And then, like, you see, like, a little mermaid in the background. And it's the never-ending mermaid tease. My comprehensive analysis is that the first movie was about discrimination, and the second movie was about discrimination, and the third movie wasn't, and the fourth movie kind of is about discrimination. So the first movie was about a couple, one of which was a human, and humans discriminate against zombies, and the other was a zombie. And Addison learned what she was taught about zombies isn't cool, and that she should support zombies. And then she's like, she wants to support zombies, but she also doesn't want to get kicked out of cheerleading for doing that. But at the end of the movie, she decides to fuck it, and she decides to support the zombies anyways, even if it gets her kicked out of cheerleading. And so you're like, this is a movie about, like, co-conspiratorship. Like,
between a person with privilege and a person actively being oppressed. And so, while it's not handled particularly well, it's really about what are you willing to give up to show your support for people who are being oppressed? And the answer is you actually should sacrifice some of your own goals and happiness if it means supporting your friends. And then the second movie is about
two different groups of people can be oppressed in different ways, and you don't have to make yourself more agreeable to the people who are oppressing you. You need to stay true to who you are and expect them to treat you without oppression. And when they do treat you with oppression, stand against it and break the rules if the rules are wrong, and work together with your different groups of people and form coalitions together to fight against oppression. Then the third movie is about how aliens are happiest if they go to Earth.
And so the first two movies aren't just about how racism is bad. They're specifically about oppression and one group that's being oppressed and the interactions between the oppressors and the oppressees.
And so the fourth movie, you're like, we've got this new couple, and they're like, this new couple's just like Addison and Zed. And look, they're doing the Addison and Zed thing where one of them accidentally hits the other one. And look, they're falling in love. But the problem is, Addison was from the oppressor, and Zed was from the oppressee. In this movie, they're just two sides. So the movie's not about oppression. And you're like, that's not the same dynamic. It's not. This is just Greece. This is just East versus West. And so, I think what happened is they realized that
The first two zombie movies,
literally too woke. East Siders and West Siders should work together is a moral that any parent can walk into the living room and see their child watching on Disney Plus and go, that's a nice metaphor for my child. But if a conservative walks in and sees the rebel zombie character saying, they're gonna say, what's this lip shit happening in my home?
like, it's not a coincidence that our lead is a human, but also white. She has to do unlearning and realizing that people she didn't formally realize were oppressed were actually being oppressed. And that's obviously a metaphor for white people. And conservatives aren't going to be happy with that metaphor. Because it's one thing to just say racism bad, but it's an entirely another thing to say that we live in a society where groups of people are still being oppressed, and that as a high schooler, here's some ideas you should keep in mind surrounding oppression.
Like, those morals are way too actually poignant to be in a kid's movie. They had to dial them back. Like, it's so clear that that's what's happened. So, yeah. I think the moral of the video is make zombies woke again. Zombies 4 is not woke. Trump won the election and they were like, zombies can't be woke anymore. That's literally what happened. When we had Biden as president, zombies were woke. Zombie phobia was spoken about. Not once in this movie did I hear about vamp phobia. Oh, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about the soundtrack. I was a little afraid at first. Zed the Zombie does do more white rap in this movie. Thank God. I was almost afraid they wouldn't have him do it anymore. Thankfully, he raps again. We can all rest easy. I mean, how could zombies possibly be a metaphor for black people if they didn't white rap? That wouldn't make any sense.